Lisa Su, in her tenure as CEO of AMD, increased the value of the company by 100x. AMD today is worth more than $300 billion. It holds more than a third of certain cloud and enterprise computing workloads. Its Ryzen and EPYC processors are benchmark leaders across consumer, professional, and data center markets. And in an industry that runs on performance, AMD is now the company setting the standard. However, in 2014, AMD stock was trading at only $2 per share, and Wall Street called it uninvestable. So at the end of this video, you'll understand the sequence of moves that turned a $2 stock into a $300 billion company. And you'll learn how to use these underlying principles in your own life and business. By the way, my name is Erik Kruger. I'm a keynote speaker and author, and I work with leaders and organizations across the world to help them move more effectively through change and transformation. This is one of the most instructive turnarounds in modern business, and Lisa Su really is a turnaround specialist. When Lisa Su became CEO of AMD in October 2014, Intel, their competitor, was spending about $11 billion on R&D annually. AMD's budget was $1 billion, so they had 1/10 of the firepower. Now, Intel at the time controlled more than 80% of the CPU market, whereas AMD had no credible product roadmap. They had 4 consecutive years of losses and approximately $2 billion in debt. So the situation at AMD wasn't ambiguous at all. AMD was heading towards irrelevance, and the pace was only accelerating. Most organizations under pressure of irrelevance respond with intensity, meaning they work harder, they push their teams to deliver more but with less, they trim budgets, they extend timelines, and the underlying logic is that the current approach is fundamentally sound. Like what we are doing is working in some way. All we need is just more effort or fewer expenses. And that response feels productive, it feels responsible, but it almost never produces transformation because transformation requires a fundamentally different set of moves. It requires that you narrow focus, that you have a clear sequence of priorities, and most importantly, a willingness to stop doing things that feel important so that you can instead focus on the things that really are important. Now, AMD in 2014 is the perfect case study for what deliberate transformation looks like. Lisa Su, when she's appointed as CEO, moves very quickly and very deliberately. So within her first week, she cut 7% of AMD's global workforce, more than 740 people. At the same time, she shuts down C-Micro, AMD's server business, taking a $75 million write-down. She restructured the entire company into 2 focused business groups, and in doing so, she eliminates product lines that had been consuming resources but not producing competitive results. But then she did the thing that made all of these cuts make sense, which is that she increased their research and development spending by over 45% over the next 3 years, and she commissioned a complete redesign of AMD's processor architecture. And this would ultimately lead to the Zen architecture, the thing that really catapults them into the future. Every move in this transformation sequence served the same objective, and that's really important to understand. The layoffs freed up operating budget, the killed product lines freed up engineering capacity, and the restructuring cleared pipelines and focused attention. And everything that was freed got aimed at one bet, which is to build a processor architecture so technically superior that it could change AMD's competitive position entirely. And so when the first Ryzen processors finally reached the market in March of 2017, they delivered 52% more instructions per clock cycle than the previous generation. I have no idea what that means. I just know that sounds like a lot better than before. And it's a performance improvement that was described as structurally impossible for a company in AMD's financial situation to produce. And ultimately, this move sets into motion the sequence of events that would ultimately lead to AMD overtaking Intel as the market leader for the very first time in 2024. 10 years after Lisa Su stepped in as the CEO. In an interview with Fortune, Lisa said, "There's no such thing as cutting yourself to win." She was describing something very specific here. She was saying that cuts are necessary, but on their own, they are insufficient. What matters is what you do with them. What matters is the roadmap that they serve. But here's why creating a real roadmap for transformation can be so difficult for most of us. Psychologists call the default organizational response to change threat rigidity. And it says that when we are faced with change and threat that is in front of us, we have a very specific response. We become rigid, we become tense, we become constricted. And they say that this filters through into how we show up. So it restricts information flow in the organization, we centralize decision making, and we default to our existing routines, meaning we do what we've always done, but we now try and do it with more intensity and sometimes with fewer resources. Now, this pattern is very predictable because it feels rational. Under pressure, the instinct is that we protect what already exists. We tighten execution, we reduce variability and risk, and we ask everyone to do a little bit more, but with a little bit less. But this doesn't work. And we know it because we are just simply repeating the patterns of the past. We are repeating what got us to where we are today, and we aren't doing anything fundamentally different from before. Lisa Su's roadmap broke the AMD pattern at every point. She didn't ask AMD to do the same things but more efficiently. She eliminated entire categories of work so that a fundamentally different project could receive the attention it required. The transformation was an engineered response. It was sequenced, it was deliberate, and it was all in the service of creating big change inside of AMD. The AMD story is uncomfortable because it reveals what deliberate transformation actually demands from us. It demands narrowing, which means that we stop doing things that we often care about deeply and that we've been doing for a long time. It demands prioritization, which means publicly declaring that some work matters more than other work. And it demands risk, which means committing resources to something that might be unproven for a while until we get it right. Most organizations skip those steps. They add a new initiative alongside everything else. They spread resources across the existing portfolio and hope that transformation will just happen in parallel. Or they go the other route where they cut down on everything, but they aren't cutting with a plan in mind. They don't have a roadmap that those cuts are going to serve. So they try to transform without the pain of choosing, without the pain of doing something new. Now, Lisa Su's sequence made the choice explicit at every single stage, and that is what separates AMD's turnaround from the many turnarounds that I've studied where companies have tried but failed. In 2014, analysts called AMD uninvestable. And 3 years later, it shipped a processor that the industry considered impossible for a company in its position to build. 10 years later, it became a market leader. My biggest lesson from Lisa Su, the turnaround specialist, is that you must have a willingness to narrow focus, to prioritize what's important, and to make some big bets. So think about what you are trying to transform right now and really be honest with yourself. Are you engineering a new roadmap for what transformation should look like, or are you asking for more effort but just following the same plan? Just remember that you can't transform a company when you focus on just a slight increase from business as usual.